Hello, everyone, and welcome to Full Press Fantasy Sunday, live here, week 2 on September 18th. My name is Kyle Senra, and I'm joined by George Carmi. And we're both repping our teams pretty well. Uniform colored hat to shirt as well. So we were clearly organized this morning, weren't we, George?
100%, man. Thank you for having me here today. I'm looking forward to talking some football.
Yeah, absolutely. This should be a blast. I know quite a lot of injury news and some things that we'll cover later as the final active-inactive lists are out. So once that'll happen, we'll talk about some of the questionable players. I know there's quite a lot in the Buccaneers-Saints game, for instance. So we'll touch on that once we know for sure who's in and out, because we will get that information. But I think one of the best ways to start off is just to quickly touch on some of these later game injuries. I know T. Higgins, questionable with the concussion suffered last week. We'll see what his availability is like. But I know I'm kind of operating as if he won't play. And I think I've only got him in one league. With that league, he's on the bench, and if by that game time we reveal something, I think I've got CD Lamb in that league, and so that might be one where that's an easy pivot out in the same game.
100%.
Probably would rather be tied to Joe Burrow than Cooper Rush. But so, do you have T. Higgins anywhere? And if not, what would you kind of recommend for managers who do, and how would you approach the situation?
Yeah, I do not have any shares in T. Higgins, and obviously he's a great player. One player that seemed to be kind of doing around waiver wires, I'm kind of surprised with, is Tyler Boyd. If Tyler Boyd's definitely available and you see him as an available pickup, he's an easy plug and play because he does get targets. He's familiar with the offense, and I do think he can actually step up and kind of jump into the game right there. I'm kind of previewing the waiver wire as well, kind of see if there's any other big big people to kind of look at. But Russell Gage is available. He might play in the Buccaneers game with all those injuries that are going along. Sterling Shepard's available as well. But I think the easy pivot point would be Tyler Boyd if he is available in some leagues, depends on how deep your league is.
And you get that, again, the knowledge of, let's say you go for Sterling Shepard or even Richie James, who led the Giants in targets last week. If you pick up either of those guys, I believe that's a 1:00 Eastern start. So you have to play them and without knowing if T. Higgins is going to play or not. So if you get a player like Boyd, for instance, that's someone where, okay, you'll know. And if Higgins is active, you can flip to Higgins, but you then also have the knowledge with Boyd. So you've got, any of the 4:00 games, and then the Sunday night or Monday night games. There's 2 games Monday night. So that does it is a better week. I think fantasy wise, it'd almost be an advantage to have 2 Monday night games every week. So you kind of have protection on those Monday night games. But
I agree.
Just looking at the 4:00 slate. So you've got 49ers, Seahawks. And I guess I'll just go through all these teams. And if you think of anyone on any of these teams that you think could be a good waiver wire add, just feel free to chime in. I'll kind of think back as well as I go through. But we got Seahawks, 49ers, Falcons, Rams, Texans, Broncos, and the Bengals and Cowboys game there.
Yeah. Looking around. Go ahead. Nico Collins. That's probably a good one. Pretty solid one there as well.
Go ahead, George. Sorry.
No, for sure. I agree with you there. Brandon Ayuk might be available in San Francisco. He hasn't been really doing too much, but he might be kind of a dart throw to kind of look at over there. There was a slot wide receiver for the Cardinals that had a pretty big game last week. Yeah, exactly right. Good call, man. Basically, that's the person who's kind of he's a sleeper. That's a dart throw type of play, depending on how deep your league is going to be. But, with everyone injured, there's a lot of, with DeAndre Hopkins out for 6 games. I think he had 7 targets last week and 6 catches, if I remember correctly. He had a pretty solid game last week. So that's a potential pick to kind of slide in there. But, you never know how deep your league is.
Yeah, for sure. So those are some names, and so we've got, I think, at different levels of availability on all those players. So even just at the 4:00 slate alone, you've got options. But even so, if you want protection on Higgins specifically, you could look to the Packers-Bears game. Honestly, just as, again, Packers fan, Full Press Packers podcast co-host, I kind of like how Romeo Doubs got better as the game went on, and Rodgers seemed to trust him more. I think he will be the number 1 receiver on this team by the end of the year once Rodgers fully trusts him. And I know Alan Lazard's questionable too, so that this could also apply to him as well in terms of now players in Lazard insurance. I wouldn't be so excited to play him. I know I've got him in a few leagues, and I'm not really, again, banking on him being out anyway. So I've kind of, the leagues where I have him active, I may have already kind of decided to not play him. And if there is a late game like that and you want to play him, Doubs might be a really good pickup. And if Lazard doesn't play, then expect Doubs, I think, to see a bigger role. And then the big news, though, I think that'll affect a lot of people is the Monday night potential inactive with the questionable tag on Gabe Davis.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a nice little pivot point there would be Jamison Crowder. I don't know if people are actually kind of see him he's frequent in plenty of waiver wires that I'm in my 4 leagues that I'm in. He is a target hound. He definitely is a great slot wide receiver. He's definitely shifty. Josh Allen, man, had an amazing performance week 1. Just seemed in complete control of the offense. I wouldn't mind just staying with Buffalo and kind of having that high upside, high target player, especially in PPR. I think Crowder is more of a PPR kind of play where he can get 5-6 targets, maybe 60, 70 yards, maybe a touchdown, but that might be a potential slot in right there.
Isaiah McKenzie would fit in nicely too. So it'd be like 2 really easy targets in the same game, same team.
I agree to that.
Trying to think of Titans. I know Kyle Phillips was questionable, but I'm trying to think. I don't know. Burks is probably not on waivers. Maybe someone dropped him. I don't know that I want to necessarily pick up Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. I feel like the Titans would not be the game to target there. I would probably prefer to target Vikings Eagles. If you can't pick up Crowder or McKenzie, they're already drafted, perhaps already rostered. Look for players in the Vikings Eagles game. I know one of the leagues where I have Gabe Davis. I've also got KJ Hamler and kind of have it where, okay, if Davis doesn't go, I'll get Hamler in the next game against the Eagles. I can go. Actually, that league is quite complicated. I've got quite a lot of players on Monday night, and I think Boston Scott is like a backup break glass in case of emergency for that too. So there's definitely a few options. I can maybe touch on that later, just like the whole complex process. But KJ Osborne to me would be a good player who he didn't do well week 1. So maybe someone, if he was drafted, maybe dropped him already, or not necessarily a priority waiver ad. So KJ Osborne, I think, is maybe one of the best players to almost add for all these players we've talked about, just because he's on the latest possible game. So if you don't have to play him, he's great because you can hold him as a backup for any player.
Yeah, 100%. I actually want to take a look at Kwez Watkins as well. He's more of like a deep threat for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm gonna take a look at his target share for week 1. He definitely is more of like a returner type. He's more of a deep kind of shot kind of player. But he had 3 catches. Let me take a look at this. He only had let me take a look real quick.
Well,
yeah, nothing.
Only 3 catches is more than Devonte Smith. So
exactly right. But actually, I'm looking at it. He actually didn't have any targets week 1. But I know he is a big favorite in Philadelphia circle. So that could be a potential dart throw. But I'll look elsewhere. I probably look at the Buffalo game and look at Jamison Crowder probably.
Well, he did as well as Devonte Smith. So
exactly.
Normally we'd think that's a good thing, but yeah, not this week. But
not this week, not at all.
That's why I said Boston Scott, because I almost feel like the run game might be the better way to almost get a streamer like that. Whereas the Vikings, you'd want to go with like a pass catching option like Osborne, I think, with the Cousins as a quarterback passing a lot. So Boston Scott might be and this is the thing with like using the flex spot. If you've got Gabe Davis as say your wide receiver 2 on your team, you probably, even if he wasn't healthy, even if he was healthy, even if he didn't have the questionable tag, I'd still want to play him in the flex spot just in case. Because it seems like this didn't happen. This almost didn't happen at practice. This seemed like this happened Saturday I guess they have a Monday game. So maybe I guess Saturday would have been their final practice day. Never mind. But you could still, someone could get hurt on their off day Sunday for a Monday game. And then if you don't get that news until after all the games lock and suddenly you have to replace that player with a wide receiver, which again, if you've got like a KJ Osborne or one of the other Buffalo receivers is fine. But let's say you were stuck and it's a deeper league and you had to go with Boston Scott. If you could do that, if Gabe Davis is in the flex. So I always try and flex the Monday night players. I know that the common thing is never flex your Thursday players, but I take it a step further and
100%.
The flex spots as late as possible. So even if it's Sunday night games, that makes a difference too. Just, usually nothing goes wrong and it's fine, but the one time it does go wrong, you have that more flexibility. So try to leave your flex spots as late into your lineups as possible to give yourself the flexibility.
I love that. It's great advice, actually. So you're exactly right. It gives you as much flexibility as you possibly can.
And then we have Braden Holochek, full press coverage Chiefs managing editor. So 2 managing editors on screen, Packers, Commanders, and Chiefs on the screen in terms of a comment. So appreciate Braden. And every Sunday morning, check out. I believe they start at 10:30 or 11. Braden and Ian are on, and I think they start at 10 actually. Yeah, I need to get my schedule. Braden can correct us, but yeah, they're on before, just talk more NFL stuff. But yeah, fantasy show. So Braden's mentioning he has Gabe Davis and could add either Isaiah McKenzie or Jamison Crowder. So that's interesting now that the option to get either. So you initially went to Crowder. So is that your answer here between the 2?
Yeah, I think so. It's definitely like feast or famine, right? Isaiah McKenzie will probably slide in a wide receiver team, have more potential as an upside touchdown play. But I think if you want a higher floor, I think Jamison Crowder is the look to go to right there, because I do think he is, he is a high volume type of wide receiver. He has consistently done it in the NFL over several teams now, and I just think he's going to give you a stat line of like 6 catches, 68 yards. If you need something like that, I think you can definitely plug him in. But at the same time, you kind of have to go for broke, right? You have to go for the win. So if you think Isaiah McKenzie could take it to that next level and you want that touchdown, he's more volatile. He's more of that upside pick. But I would personally go Jamison Crowder. How about you, bud?
Well, I look at so Crowder had 4 targets, McKenzie had 3. So like the usage was pretty similar. Like Gabe Davis actually only had 5, but just trumped them in yardage. So it seems like they both kind of have like if they're expected to get a ton of volume. Like, Zach Moss was second on the team in targets last week. That doesn't seem like that's going to repeat. So that should be open more for them. Crowder probably does give enough volume to be a safe floor option. I guess McKenzie could as well with the volume, but it seems like the yardage will be really low. So like you said, it really does come down to touchdown upside.
McKenzie got one week 1.
Yeah, he did. But now I'm just going to go back to my preseason touchdown projection, just kind of across the whole season. Is McKenzie really projected to get that many more touchdowns than Crowder? If so, then we can maybe expect that to repeat. But if not, I had Crowder at 4, McKenzie at 2. So I would almost say the touchdown odds would favor Crowder getting one, since he hasn't got one on again, more targets and more catches than McKenzie did last week. So I actually think I'd lead Crowder either way. I think I think both are good plays this week, but I would kind of favor Crowder. The one thing is both players fumbled. So they both have this kind of risk associated with them, right? Like, if either fumbles, maybe it's just, okay, I'm giving 20 targets to Stephon Diggs.
And Crowder has an upward trajectory as well. Coming from the Jets going to the Buffalo's offense, you definitely see a higher upside with him. So if you're looking at previous stats for Crowder, I think he has the potential to do even better. So I'm rooting for him.
Yeah, so I think, Braden, we're going to say go Crowder, but it's close. Like there could be reasons to go with McKenzie for sure. I wonder, because it seems like they both project to be slot receivers. So they're in and out drive per drive. It seems like it's almost like a committee approach to that slot receiver position, as opposed to Beasley last year, who would just play most of it all the time. So, it might just be luck that McKenzie was for the touchdown last time. Crowder could be on the touchdown this time. So yeah, I think we'll both say go Crowder.
I agree.
But yeah, difficult decision. And that's something that kind of happens in fantasy regardless of injuries. The active inactive reports will be coming soon. But before we get to that, did you have any really tough start sit decisions that you were mulling over this week? And I think part of it is, we want to, we like talking fantasy, we like talking about our teams, but B, also the reasons we're making these decisions, not just naming the player we're going to choose, but why are we choosing them, I think can also help viewers and listeners.
For sure. So basically one person is kind of a little thorn in my side. I don't know how much to invest in him, is Damian Harris for the Patriots, right? Last year, he basically had, I believe under about 900 yards with 15 touchdowns. I drafted him in about the 4th round in a couple of my leagues. And, I think he had about 60 yards rushing last week, something respectable with 13 touches. He split it with Ramondre Stevenson, so they definitely have like a shared backfield over there. But I just don't know if I can trust him week to week. And I definitely have right now he's my flex in a couple of my leagues as well. So I'm just trying to figure out, do I stay with that high floor with Damian Harris, or do I look at potential upside? Like in my one ESPN league, I have Damian Harris. He's projected to get 11.1 points this week. I have Devonte Smith on the bench. He has a high upside potential, but very volatile. I had 0 touches last week. I have Tyler Boyd sitting there. I have Jamal Williams. I have Kenneth Gainwell, and I have Robbie Anderson. Those are all my different options I could look at. But looking at Damian Harris, like I just kind of like that steady floor, because I'm kind of blessed. I had Mike Williams that I started under my Thursday Night Football game. He gave me 25.3. So like, in regard to thought process, we're kind of going that route with our podcast. It's like, you already kind of have the lead. You kind of are kind of looking pretty good moving forward into the weekend. Do you take that? Do you have a dart throw that's very volatile and could potentially sink you? Or do you have the high floor that kind of bolster your team to continue into a winning game, if that makes any sense? So that's my thought process, Kyle, and I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, and that one's tricky because 1:00 starts. So like, I think the name that stood out to me was Tyler Boyd, just because the offense stood out. And I think that's the one thing that I'm worried about, the Patriots' struggles on offense. I think Mac Jones is playing today, right? Like, I don't think that was in question. I think he has the back spasms, so he's maybe not 100%, but it seemed like he was going to play the whole time. But still, maybe a bit of concern about the inefficiency of the offense against a good Steelers defense. So the one thing that stood out to me is target the good offense instead. Like if you're going to pivot off Damian Harris, which of those offenses is really good. And Tyler Boyd stood out to me. The fear there is we don't know if T. Higgins is playing or not, as we mentioned earlier. So that's kind of the risk it or biscuit. But I think you were mentioning it's a flex spot, so you can go in with the receiver. So I would probably lean Boyd because just to spoil one of the actives, if DeAndre Swift wasn't playing, I think I might say Jamal Williams, thinking he's going to get the volume entirely to him, as well as the pass catching role and the goal line role, which he saw last week. I almost think even with Swift active, which it looks like he is today.
Yeah, Harris is going to be active.
Williams to me isn't that different than Damian Harris. Like, it's still an offense that might struggle, especially against your defense and that defensive line. Like, that might be not the greatest matchup for Williams from a defensive line standpoint, being able to get like the goal line carries and be able to get a short yardage touchdown. But I guess that also applies to the Steelers too, right? So they're almost the same player. So that's almost, where would you bank on it? Maybe I think I'd still lean Williams because we know Swift isn't 100%. Does he just still get more volume anyway? So I think I'd lean either of those two options, Williams or Tyler Boyd. But my inclination would be Boyd. But full disclosure, George, Tyler Boyd is my most rostered player in fantasy. Like,
I got him a couple too. I got some shares on him.
I think of the 9 spots I have him, I'm starting him in like 8 spots. So
okay. He's full PPR. This is a full PPR league. Does that sway your opinion one way or the other?
Yeah. I think it's even in half PPR. I might still lean Boyd, but I think full PPR, I think I'd definitely go Boyd there. I think full PPR, I'd try and flex a receiver most weeks if you've got like. So who are your other 2 receivers that you already have to where Boyd's on the bench?
So I have Mike Evans and I have Mike Williams.
Yeah, so that's probably a trio I'd want to maybe try and start most weeks, even with Higgins there. That's still an offense I think you have a lot of boom bust potential with. Now there's certain matchups. Okay, a really bad defense is maybe a good place to target Damian Harris. So that's maybe someone where you really want to pick the matchups with him. I know I've got Harris, I think in only 1 league, and I'm not starting him today simply because I'll play him when I think the matchup's there and he has the multiple touchdown upside, which he showed a lot last year.
You did.
But I think if he's facing a good defensive line, those are maybe the weeks you want to bench him. So maybe more than just Boyd itself, it's if Harris is that guy, you probably drafted him a lot higher than those other guys. He's your kind of pivot point question every week. Is he playing a good defense or not? Is he playing a good defensive front or not? And then if not, that's okay. I want to try and get him in my lineup this week. If he is playing a really tough defense, then it's okay. Comfortable playing other options over him. So that's kind of how I would approach that situation.
And you don't view you view Devonte Smith as too volatile at this point, right? You just wild card.
Yeah, like that's after getting a 0, that's tough to
you gotta kind of give it a week to kind of.
Really did seem like and I wasn't the biggest Dallas Goedert fan, but it really did seem like even Dallas Goedert was playing ahead of him.
Yeah, I agree.
Did want to mention my bookie, the double deposit match, which we have at full press coverage. So if you use the code press22 at my bookie, you can get a deposit match up to $1,000. So I think if you can put up to 500 in and it'll double it to give you 1,000, I believe. Or unless it's you put in 1,000. Do you know the specifics?
I do not know the specifics.
Actually, it might be. Yeah, I think if they're saying 1,000, you might be able to put it in 1,000 and get it up.
Yeah, well,
they'll give you another 1,000 on top.
Exactly
so
right.
2,000 in your account. Okay.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Right. So so my bookie, that's a good deal, and that's something you can use throughout the NFL season, and I'm sure as other sports as well. If you want to save it for the spring and bet on CFL games, there you go. My obligatory CFL reference. Braden. Oh yeah. I got this one wrong for Braden. And it's funny because there's a couple decisions on my own teams I felt awful about, specifically like the Rams game Thursday. So I kind of had a few days to stew that. But man, Sunday, all I could think about is how bad I felt for Braden for saying to play David Montgomery over Cordarrelle Patterson. So I'm really sorry, Braden.
So it comes full circle. I understand.
Is he a good play with Tyler Algier likely active? Yeah.
I think so. Go ahead. What do you say, Kyle?
Just the Rams defense is tough. That's the only thing is that it's like, I know the Saints defense is actually pretty good. So maybe that's a good sign for Patterson and maybe him as a pass catcher as well. Because I think that's the one thing is Damian Williams being active. They could have maybe still trusted either as a pass catching back, but I don't think they're going to do that with the rookie Algier. So I think Patterson gets a lot of receptions. So it's not maybe great for him to get a ton of carries and touchdown upside, but maybe a good PPR floor, especially like if you are in a PPR league, Braden. That's my thinking with Patterson anyway.
I agree with you. I think he's going to be a negative game script and be behind most of the game. So they're basically going to feed him a lot and throw him the ball a lot. So if you're in a PPR league, I definitely go that direction. And Atlanta doesn't really have a lot of weapons. They want to feature Kyle Pitts and Drake London and all that, but essentially they can't do that. They're limited with Marcus Mariota. So I do see Cordarrelle Patterson having a pretty good game. And I don't trust David Montgomery either. So that's what I would do.
Yeah, I know. I'm still playing Montgomery in a couple spots, but yeah, last week I would have like just played him everywhere. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
the rain. They're just going to lean on the run game. No, that actually didn't happen at all. Neither offense could do anything. Oh, I do wonder, was that the rain or was that just those offenses just aren't that good?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a little bit. I mean, it's sort of disappointing because I think the 49ers, they have Kyle Shanahan and he's an innovative mind, but I'm not too high on Trey Lance. I know he's kind of a fantasy darling and people like him and they kind of think he has high upside, and maybe he kind of proves me wrong moving forward because he does have that rushing. I think he has the highest rush rate per quarterback in the league or something of that regard. So he definitely has upside in the fantasy play, but as a professional, I'm not sure if I trust him right now. And I think it's kind of telling that Jimmy Garoppolo is still actually waiting in the wing just in case something happens, because the 49ers they have Super Bowl aspirations. So if things start going down the rail, what are they going to do? So we'll see. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think to Braden's comment, it is a dynasty league. And I think the idea with Montgomery is you probably want to sell him after he has a really big week.
So
So
high.
yeah, so try and wait till he has a really good performance. And yeah, they're playing the Packers this week. That might not be the matchup for them. I guess maybe I'll check the Bears' future schedule. Is there like a matchup to maybe target? They play the Texans next week.
Mm.
That could be a game where so maybe maybe don't start him this week, Braden, and hold him thinking he's probably not going to do well against the Packers. So if he does, you're already expecting that. And if he let's say he does surprise you and do well against the Packers, then maybe that's a good sell opportunity anyway, as he's about to face the Texans. But if he doesn't do well, I'd say wait till that Texans game. And then I mean, if he really does bad against the Texans, his trade value is probably not great anyway. But I think right now his trade value is kind of not good. I think one of the things was the fact that he would be the starter and Herbert was very clearly a backup, but that didn't look like the case. It really does seem like a 50-50 split. And so, so I think his value is not in a good spot now. So even if he gets a bad performance, I think people are almost already expecting it. So I'd wait till after week 3 to sell him. See if he does well against the Texans, that might be the time where you can at least get the best value you're going to be able to get this season. That'd be how I approach it.
I agree. You can't sell David Montgomery with a 1.5 yards per attempt right now. It's definitely not appealing for anyone to kind of jump on. 17 carries for 26 yards. We're looking at the actual attempts. So he had 17. Justin Fields had 11. Khalil Herbert had 9. It definitely seems it's going to be like an interesting offense they're kind of finding themselves right now. I guess the one potential is that David Montgomery does get targets. He had 4 targets last week for 24 yards with 3 receptions. So he does have that potential, but I agree. Always still high. Right now he's at his lowest point. So definitely hang tough for a little bit.
So the one thing, speaking of the Bears offense, so I've got a super flex league and I've got no obvious QB1, but I've got 3 guys that are all starters. So it's
Okay.
it's the who do I bench every week basically. So I got it wrong last week. I played Ryan Tannehill and Justin Fields ahead of Matt Ryan. Pretty sure Matt Ryan outscored them both. Oh no, Tannehill did outscore Ryan. Never mind. But so then normally it would be Tannehill seems like he would be the most obvious starter every week. Even if he doesn't do well, like last week, he didn't do so well passing, but still got it done rushing, and he's still a good deep ball thrower, so he can always kind of like one play can sort of boost his day if he's having a bad day. Mm-hmm. But against the Bills, I'm really afraid of playing him. Where I think I've got Matt Ryan and Justin Fields both in.
Oh, and just how many do you have to start? 1 or 2?
I could flex another position. Okay. But I think because it is super flex, but I'd rather play 2 quarterbacks every week. I think I have enough other options to be able to not do that. So I think the best thing is to play 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah, I agree. I think you always kind of start 2 quarterbacks every single week in a super flex is definitely the way to go, especially with the high upside. Just at first glance, if we can dive into it if you want to, I would lean towards Ryan Tannehill and I would lean towards Matt Ryan. I do think I think Matt Ryan with the Colts is going to be he's playing the Jaguars. The Jaguars defense secondary wasn't necessarily the most they were susceptible to big passes, and I think Matt Ryan can definitely exploit that and get some touchdown passes there. I do think Ryan Tannehill will get they're gonna want to establish the run against the Bills, but the Bills are just gonna get ahead, and what's gonna happen is he's gonna be fighting uphill. So it might not be the prettiest pro game, but in regard to fantasy, he'll get some yards for you. He'll get some touchdowns late in the game, and I don't know. I'm still a wait and see with Justin Fields. I like him as a prospect coming out of Ohio State, but I don't think he's refined yet. And Green Bay's defense is pretty good, so I kind of go towards Tannehill and Matt Ryan.
Don't tell Justin Jefferson that, or tell him that he'll be like, oh, that's a good defense. Great. I did amazing. But yeah, no, I think the Bears don't have a receiver like Justin Jefferson to exploit it. In fact, I think the best weapon for Justin Fields is his own legs. I think that's maybe the one spot where he might be able to, the Packers have some injuries at linebacker. Yeah. One thing is that's I think so. The first thing you said, though, was Matt Ryan against this Jags defense kind of confirms my thoughts too, of just to play Matt Ryan. And then this is one where I can kind of wait. Like I can focus on other decisions, and I'll wait to see what happens through the games, and I can decide if I want Fields or if I want Tannehill. And so I can kind of decide that before the Packers game tonight. So go Packers.
Yeah, Matt Ryan's, he's going to give you a steady presence. He's going to give you like 17, 18 points a week. He's not going to break the bank or anything like that, but he's going to give you a high floor. He's going to give you that like QB 15 range. Just something I'm assuming because you have low investment in quarterbacks, you probably have high investment in other positions. So just having him right there will kind of protect you, as a high floor.
Yeah, it's a contract salary league, so you can literally see the investments in the contracts. And yeah, the two biggest contracts I have are Stephon Diggs and James Conner. So
okay, yeah. Diggs had a great week, first week one.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, he can help carry me because he's the anchor on this team. Until
I got a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, I'll say if we have a pivot point, I have a question as well. So I have a Yahoo league right now. We can kind of talk our process here. So I have 3 wide receivers. I have 1 flex. So my 2 starting wide receivers are Devonte Adams and Mike Williams. I think that's a solid starting point right there. And then we have a wide receiver, running back, tight end flex position. So right now I have Cortland Sutton. He had like a decent game last week. On the stat, if you look at the box score, I think he had like 5 catches, 70 yards, something along that. He had a slow first half, but I watched the game live, and he had a lot of red zone targets. He had a great pass interference play that kind of brought them down within the red zone within 10-yard line. So I do like Cortland Sutton's upside, and I have him as my flex right now. But I do have other options. So Damian Harris again is there. I have Chase Edmonds, who people keep I'm all week long. People have been talking about Chase Edmonds against the Ravens. It's been a sexy pick for whatever reason or another.
Michael Carter did well against them last week, to be fair.
Okay, so that's the rationale behind it.
Back, so okay. I can see why people would say that.
There you go.
Keep continuing with the other options.
Then I have Mike Thomas, and then I have Jeff Wilson, or my other options. I got him off the waiver wire, so I have some pretty good options. I have some pretty good depth there. So I have
that's Saints Michael Thomas, right? Not Bengals Mike Thomas.
Yeah, Saints Michael Thomas.
Okay,
yeah, exactly. Man, so I don't know. Right now, Cortland Sutton's projected 10.15 against Houston. He's the highest projection out of all of them. I think he was kind of knocking on the door last week, and I think Russell Wilson wants to put his fingers on this offense. So I can see him having that DK Metcalf rule and maybe get a touchdown this week. So I might just kind of roll with that, but there are some interesting options on the bench. And I know Mike Thomas. So Mike Thomas ended last week with 2 touchdowns. He had a very quiet first half to start the season, start the game, but then he started to click with Jameson Winston. So I don't know. So what do you think? Any options there?
So you go back to the scoring. Did you say half point PPR or full point?
So this is like standard league, so no point. Yeah, no PPR. I hate those leagues.
I could see why because my first thing was, oh man, Thomas, like if he really is back, he's just going to catch so many passes that he almost has to be in the lineup every week. But if it is truly based on like the touchdown upside,
yeah,
and that's the thing that normally no PPR you'd favor the running back, but that actually I think hurts Chase Edmonds because I just mentioned Michael Carter did so well in the receiving game. I think he had more receiving yards than rushing yards, or he was at least I think he was equal. So. I think you just chase where you think the touchdowns will be, and go with the quarterback. Sutton tied to Russell Wilson, I think is they're going to be angry after losing. So you got to think that they went a couple fumbles near the goal line too. I wonder if this is something where the offense, we're gonna be a little more pass heavy near the goal line for now until we prove that we can kind of hang on to football, because unfortunately Gordon's kind of had that throughout his career. The fumbling at the goal line. I remember that was kind of a problem with the Chargers. And I mean, if that's also seems to be a problem with Javante, a pattern early in his young career. So yeah.
Let me add a little bit more intrigue to this. So I have Javante Williams as my starting running back. Does that influence your decision at all?
Probably not.
I personally don't think so. I think Denver's going to roll against Houston, but it's whatever. I mean, just want to get your input.
I think the combined chances of those other offenses scoring touchdowns, you might almost rather bank on Denver getting multiple touchdowns rather than any of them getting enough touchdowns to support those one player. So yeah, against Houston, yeah, I think that's be calculated with when you do that, and to see this, I would think this is a good matchup to do that in. Or is it so much of a blowout that you don't, though? But no, but I think, especially the way it ended for Denver last week, coming off a loss, I like that doubling up this week. I think I wouldn't necessarily want to do it every week, knowing where what matchups are good, like what defenses are better against the run than they are against the pass. I don't know if that really makes a difference with Houston, to be honest. They're probably bad against both. So yeah, I like playing both. I think.
Cool. Sounds good.
Interesting. And then some good game theory and well, these specific decisions. I guess back to Braden's talk of David Montgomery, I'm looking through the one spot where I'm considering, like, there's a couple of leagues where I'm going to for sure play Montgomery. Other leagues where I'm for sure benching him. One where I've got Montgomery or Rashad Penny.
I kind of like Rashad Penny. I think he actually had 60 yards rushing and had a couple explosive plays last week. A couple plays that got called back because of a couple penalties as well. So he looked explosive. He seemed like to have he seemed to have that like that he continued what he ended last year with. He actually ended last year with a pretty good streak of rushing games.
He did.
The only potential flaw, I don't know if this is even the big one, is Kenneth Walker, I believe, has a potential to play this game. So that's a Seahawks draft pick, a high investment. So they might incorporate some of his touches into the game. But I like Rashad Penny. I think he definitely I think Kenneth Walker's first pro game, I'm going to give him a heavy dosage. I think it's going to be still Rashad Penny. And I'm not a big Montgomery guy. Every time I've played Montgomery in the past, he's always kind of let me down. So maybe I just got that bitter taste in my mouth, but I'm kind of rooting for Rashad Penny here.
If you had Montgomery in 2019, I think I did a couple spots, you were really happy with him then because that stretch where he ended as like a top 6. You actually think he was, over the course of the whole year, I think a top 6 running back. So if you had him that year, you were really happy, but most every other year, not so much. Or I think that was 2020, actually, not 2019. Yeah, that's a good point. Both defenses seem tough. Packers didn't allow a rushing touchdown last week, though, but the 49ers did. So I guess if
that's true.
If you want to lean anywhere, like Penny would, in theory, have the better matchup for that. But did the Packers not allow a rushing touchdown just because Justin Jefferson was scoring all of them? That could also be the reason.
That's true.
But yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I don't really have Penny in very many spots, and having Montgomery already in a few other spots, I think it's kind of one of also those where I'd like to get at least one Penny exposure in case he goes off for a big game against the 49ers. And if Montgomery goes off, I've got him in a couple other spots, so I won't be as upset about it. So I was kind of leaning Penny anyway, but yeah, it does seem like Montgomery is not he might still be the lead guy, but yeah, he's not the workhorse anymore.
And that's the fun part about fantasy. I like that rationale, Kyle. So if you're in multiple leagues, it's kind of fun to kind of diversify and throw one or two people in different positions to kind of see what happens, because you don't want to have that person sitting on the bench. Nothing hurts more than to see that guy blow up while he's sitting on the bench. So we'll see. I'm not sure if Rashad Penny's going to be that guy, but at the same time, it's nice to kind of give him some exposure there. So we'll see.
Yeah, for sure.
You knew who's killing me. So George Kittle. So I basically drafted him early on. I got him maybe the 3rd or 4th round, I think. I was like, I was sitting there. Like the big guys came off the board. It was Travis Kelce came off the board. I think Kyle Pitts came off the board. And it was like Darren Waller or George Kittle. I'm like, man, who am I going to get? And, I wanted a tight end because he was the best value at the time. And I was kind of leaning Waller, but at the same time, I was like, Kittle, we'll see. And if Shanahan offense, Trey Lance was getting a lot of hype. I got him. Hasn't played the last 2 weeks, kind of killing me right there. I guess what are some of your streaming tight end options? I actually was blessed in one league. I got Tyler Higbee, which I think is going to be a potential. I think he has some high upside there. But do you have any good tight end options that you were kind of keeping your eye on, or anyone that you like down the road?
So we talked about this a couple weeks ago, as well as the Packers pod. I also am part of the Full Press Fantasy pod, and my co-host Brad and I, we spoke about this actually just after Monday Night Football last week, going through the tight end targets and which tight ends got targets. Tyler Higbee had the most targets in week 1 of all tight ends, 11. So naturally, like that would be like at the top of the list where I'd go. Back to the Bengals, Hayden Hurst had 8 targets.
I saw that.
And I think that's the guy that I kind of pegged as maybe even being the best overall waiver wire claim this week, because he could be that, what made Dalton Schultz successful last year? What made Logan Thomas so successful as a he finished a top 3 tight end the year before. They got targets throughout the entire season, and it started week 1. You look back to 2020, Logan Thomas week 1, I think he had probably 6 or 7 targets, and look what he had 6 targets this week again too. So he's actually a good streaming option. I find I've got him started in a couple spots. But I think Higbee and Hurst were to me the 2 biggest pickups at tight end. Pat Freiermuth had 10 targets, but he's someone I'd imagine would be drafted in most leagues. And I don't love the matchup against the Patriots, so I wouldn't. I'd rather stream pick up Hurst or Higbee. So those would be the 2 guys I have, and both have the advantage where if you want to wait for Kittle's matchup at 4:00 Eastern, you can, and decide then to know if he's out or not before playing either of them. So I think both of those are great options. So
I think Kittle officially got ruled out this morning from what I saw with Adam Schefter. Okay. I could be wrong, but so I guess I'll ask you from the insider perspective here, right? So I definitely saw Hayden Hurst available. Tyler Higbee if he was on the waiver wire, I think it was a no brainer. You have to pick him up and add him. So I have him in a couple of shares in a couple of leagues. I guess one option that I saw was Ryan Tonyan from the Packers. I know he
Robert
was a
Tonyan,
pretty
exactly.
solid player. Would you take him over Hurst, or what would you do?
No, Hurst. To me, I would take Hurst over Higbee, even, to be honest.
Okay.
I've got him
Wow,
at tight end 7 this week.
Okay.
And I think part of my thing with Higbee was that matchup dependent? Was it, okay, we need to get the ball out quickly because this Bills pass rush is just too big?
Mhm.
And the other problem too is he had 11 targets and produced 38 yards, like super inefficient with him. There's a lot of drops in there. So
that's true.
I'd actually go with Hurst ahead of Higbee, to be honest. And
okay,
if I had to, top 3 tight ends to pick up this week, because I almost want to say Logan Thomas, to be honest.
I do like Logan Thomas.
I think I'd go Tonyan over Thomas because against the Bears, I think Tonyan has a chance to be the Packers' top target this week. The Bears traditionally, that especially in Packers games, that's traditionally where the Packers have had to go in order to beat the Bears. Like Devontae's had sometimes big games, but he's also sometimes been able to be shut out because the pass rush is so big he can't get in the ball downfield. So
yeah,
I think Hurst, Higbee, Tonyan would be my 1, 2, 3 for tight ends this week, and Thomas as a really close 4.
Yeah, very good. I think Thomas. So, and like Washington circles, Thomas is kind of viewed as like a red zone target. He has a big body. I think it's like 6'4", 6'5". Carson Wentz over the past 3 years has featured his target. So Lamar Jackson obviously force feeds Mark Andrews. That's the number 1 tight end combination in the league. Carson Wentz, over the last 3 years has targeted his tight end number 3 overall. So I think Logan Thomas has high upside share play there. The only thing that I'm kind of concerned about is Cole Turner, who basically was Carson Strong's tight end at Nevada. He's coming back this week in Washington, and he actually had a great camp, but this is his first time playing in a pro game, so he might eat into Logan Thomas's play. But Logan Thomas is the captain of the team. I think he's viewed in high regard, so I definitely think he's someone to kind of keep an eye on over the next couple of weeks and pick him up possibly.
Yeah, for sure. So those are good 4 tight ends. I think that the thing with all 4 of those is we expect them to see targets throughout the season. So good streaming options week to week, but we think that they're good to rely on these guys. Like I was naming a bunch of tight ends that probably got drafted that Adam Troutman didn't see a target. There were, I think it was 63 different tight ends saw a target in week 1. And Adam Troutman was not one of them. So if you have Adam Troutman on your team, just drop him. There's not, he's the 3rd tight end there basically, but not someone I want to roster. I get into deeper dynasty leagues. He's so young, you'd hold him, but any redraft league, Troutman's gone. Cole Kmet, honestly, 1 target. And I know it was the game script, the monsoon and stuff, but like the Bears could also, if something goes wrong, they'll just run a lot. It seems like that's because they're where they rely best on. So if Ryan Griffin didn't get more targets than Cole Kmet, I'd be more excited about Cole Kmet, but he's someone I'd be willing to draft. David Njoku had 1 target. Mike Gesicki had 1 target.
Yeah, Gesicki killed me last week.
Against the Patriots, though, who, again, back to why I don't really like Freiermuth this week, the Patriots, even like Travis Kelce has bad games against the Patriots. They know how to shut down tight ends. So, like, I had Gesicki, I think, in 1 league, and I benched him. I think I've got the Tua Gesicki stack, and I didn't play either. And even this week, I don't think I'm going to play Gesicki. I need to see it first, but that was one where it was almost, you could predict that he's going to do bad, but it also seems like he really is only just going to get 1 target. Like that could persist. Irv Smith, 2 targets, 0 catches. Like I don't really love him. I've always kind of been saying through the offseason, I think KJ Osborne's the guy you want there as the 3rd pass catcher, not the tight end. So those are guys I'd be willing to drop for any of those 4 names we just brought up.
And there's actually 2 tight ends that kind of piqued my interest. One of them should be still available. One of them got snatched up pretty quickly. So for one, if you get in your league, in certain leagues, Taysom Hill obviously has that like a tight end quarterback swing in some of the leagues. I don't know how exciting that is for you, but potentially he had like 4 carries, 60 yards and a touchdown last week or something in regard to those lines. He definitely has some high upside there. I know he was a hot waiver wire pickup, and he was picked up in a lot of leagues this week. So in regard to like future potential, that might be someone would be interesting. And then the other one is Gerald Everett from the Chargers. For some reason or another, he's actually was kind of hanging around on the waiver wires. And like what's kind of funny is the tight end positions are really top heavy, right? You have 2 or 3 all the way on the top, and then becomes a little like cluster more in the middle. But Gerald Everett is a high octane offense. Justin Herbert showed me a lot last week, this Thursday with his game, and Gerald Everett finished with a pretty good stat line if I remember correctly. I think he had he had that really bad play where they basically he kind of was tired and essentially gave up.
And I started Trey McKitty. They should have put Trey McKitty in and given McKitty that target, would have got the touchdown. Thanks, Chargers, for that. Thank you, Brandon Staley.
He got everything, but he had 6 catches for 71 yards, and now he was getting targeted for the end zone right there. So if he's sitting there on the waiver wire, so that's definitely something to keep an eye on. But yeah, in real life, he killed him. So we'll see.
Yeah, and that's something unfortunately you have to wait till next week to kind of pick up. But yeah, if it was there, I guess the one thing that was concerned with me with Everett, but that really seemed to resolve in week 2 is the fact that McKitty wasn't involved. They had both had 4 targets week 1, so that was kind of the concerning
balance.
And Donald Parham, I think coming back will eventually also sour Everett. But as long as Parham's out, I think Everett's kind of a good play every week. Where I'd probably rather play him over Tunyon and most of the guy, even Higbee. I think Hayden Hurst is the one guy that I'm just saying. I think he's gonna, especially if Higgins is out, I think he's gonna smash, and this could be a big touchdown week for him because they even gave him a red zone carry, like a carry like inside the 10, I think.
Oh, so I didn't know that.
The Bengals. And I only knew that because I happened to be watching the game at the time, so that is a bit of like a bias on that game alone. But that really stood out to me as okay, if they seem to want to get him the ball in his hands as a priority anywhere. So I really like Hurst as he could be that Dalton Schultz this year, where he could finish as a top 6 tight end this year out of kind of nowhere, just because he'll get the targets and get the opportunities, and it's a good offense where the touchdown upside will also be there
for sure.
But yeah, I think those are, but to your point, because it's so shallow after the top few, it makes a guy like Taysom Hill playable, even if he barely runs routes, barely gets targets, because we're just chasing touchdowns. So yeah, exactly. I think Hill is playable. I think I've got him at tight end 18 this week. So a few other options I'd prefer. Those other 4 we mentioned before, just because I think they have the problem with Hill is that the ceiling is truly like he has to get 2. If he gets 2 touchdowns. And I mean, if he breaks off a long run like he did, okay, 2 touchdowns, that gets him into the 15 point. But normally it's 2 goal line carry touchdowns where you're just basically just getting over double digit. Like, okay, that's 2 touchdowns, he gets you 12 points, 13 points, right? Like, it's not the 20 point upside. Whereas I think all those guys, if Hayden Hurst, if Higbee, if Tunyon, they score 2 touchdowns this week, there's probably enough yards attached to where they're getting into 20 points.
Pop. So yeah, I like that. That's a good way of looking at it. That's great advice.
There's a certain threshold. Once you get past that, Hill makes sense. Yeah. So for me, it was tight end 18, but that could vary for a lot of people. So good question.
I love that. That's fantastic. I think, like, from my perspective, what Taysom Hill was more of like a deep stash to kind of see where it goes. But I love what you just said. That's great knowledge. That's a great perspective to kind of think about. Like, Taysom Hill could score a touchdown, but is he going to offer that high yardage and high upside, that 20 touchdown pop that you want from a tight end? And he probably doesn't do that most weeks. I like that.
Anyway, so if there were no other start sits, I guess we could get to talk about actives and inactives for the last 15 minutes of this.
Sure.
So we're specifically looking at the inactive players we'll go through each game. So Dolphins, Ravens, a couple of running backs. So Myles Gaskin, interesting because it seemed like he's the 3rd back. So it's interesting to see him inactive, which, back to your point about Chase Edmonds, Gaskin's presence almost caps Edmonds' best upside, which is through the pass catching. So that it makes Edmonds more playable. I don't love it against the Ravens defense though.
I agree.
So I don't think Edmonds is in a must play territory, but I think if you need to, he's there. Deeper starter leagues where you're starting 10, 11 players, I think he'd be good there. For the Ravens, J.K. Dobbins is still out. So they're going to... I
saw that. Wow. Interesting. Okay.
Last week, I was all in on Drake ahead of Mike Davis. It looks like that was the case, but Drake didn't do much. But the Jets' run defense has also traditionally been great. Even when that team has been awful, their run defense is really good. And so I think that's part of the problem there. So against the Dolphins, that might be better.
Yeah.
So I think Drake is playable this week. Actually, between those two, Drake and Edmonds, who would you rather play between those two?
So that's interesting. Depends on the league, but I personally would go Edmonds. I think Edmonds will get higher volume and more reception, so I'd probably go that route. Drake, he's a good player and everything, but I think Lamar Jackson will probably do a lot of design runs. He'll probably throw to Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews. There's a lot of mouths to feed, I guess, and I don't think they're going to feature Kenyon Drake, but I think they might feature Chase Edmonds, so that's the route I would go.
Yeah, I'd agree there too. Edmonds would be the guy for me. And at the core, I think more passing volume, more pass catching potential for Edmonds as well.
I agree.
So that really pushes that there. James Prochet is also inactive, so kind of surprising there. Although it really did seem like Devin Duvernay emerged as the wide receiver too last week, and with Prochet out, it seemed like that would be the biggest competition of that. So it should be a good week for Duvernay too. It may not be been a 1 week sort of a 1 week.
He's someone to keep. He's someone to keep an eye on. I think Duvernay, there's and the Ravens always have that funny wide receiver. You kind of like fringe, like you should start him every single week or keep an eye on. I think Duvernay might be that guy, so definitely keep an eye on him.
Jets, Browns, interesting one. CJ Uzoma is inactive. And talking about tight ends, actually someone that I would have ahead of Taysom Hill, but below those other 4 we talked about is Tyler Conklin. He had 7 targets last week. He had more targets than Logan Thomas and Robert Tonyan.
Okay.
Robert Thomas, that's a hockey player, so we combine them together. Two football players make a hockey player, I guess. I don't know. That's Canadian bias on my part. But yeah, I think Tyler Conklin, I think could be a good play at tight end this week. So I think I've got him at like tight end 15, 14 in my rankings for the week. So if you're stuck and need a streaming option and all the other options we talked about aren't available, I think Conklin's great. I think I'd have him ahead of Taysom Hill again. I think. Just because, again, enough routes run, enough where if he gets the touchdown, enough yards to it too. For Washington, I guess, fantasy-wise, there's nothing really surprising. Cole Turner's still inactive, but again, I think the only tight end you want in Washington is Logan Thomas to me, because I think
so. Cole Turner was officially inactive. I missed that.
Yeah.
Okay, go. Interesting. Okay, cool.
And then you could correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like if Thomas isn't getting the targets, the next tight end won't be the guy drawing targets. They'll just go more towards the receivers, Samuel, Dotson, of course, McLaurin. So to me, Logan Thomas is the only tight end you want on the team.
I agree. So basically, the way it would work is Logan Thomas is a starting tight end. You kind of force feed him. John Bates is more of a blocking tight end. So I think, there's going to be an interesting dynamic between Jahan Dotson. I think will be a lot of quick features and quick passes there too. So it's gonna be a lot of passes going around.
So Deandre Swift is active, but here's one: Frank Ragnow is inactive, and not talking too much about offensive linemen, but he is one of the best centers in the league. So especially running up the middle, that actually, I guess that hurts Williams more than anything. So yeah, the idea of Jamal Williams being playable, I think is I definitely would go with Boyd in that one league of yours.
And then I think also, that's a good call. Thank you. I think attacking Washington secondary and their linebacking core would probably be more prudent anyway. So I think they might go that route. But then again, Deandre Swift, get him in the open field, throw some screens to him, and force Washington to tackle.
This has to be the week for TJ Hawkinson, I think. I've got him at tight end 3 this week. I think this is the week he smashes. And if he doesn't, then it's yeah. And I don't have any dynasty exposure to him, but I found his redraft price was a lot better than his dynasty price. So I ended up, I think he's my most rostered tight end just because I've got so many shares in redraft specifically. So that'll be one where I've really got to reckon, like, is that someone I'm willing to cut bait with, even though is maybe a 7th or 8th round pick in some leagues. But man, if I can get Hayden Hurst and he's the guy drawing targets, I mean, Hawkinson got 7 targets last week. So even with a poor performance, I still think he's fine.
No,
that's why I think he's also going to smash here.
I think that's a great insight. I think Washington secondary, Washington linebacking core has been susceptible to tight ends for years, and this is an optimal matchup for him. TJ Hawkinson in Detroit circles are high on him, and he went to the Pro Bowl last year, but Pro Bowl is more of like popularity contest. But I do think Hawkinson is a serviceable tight end, a pretty good tight end. This is a great matchup for him, and if he doesn't do well this week, then that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, for sure. Just moving on to the next teams, Colts Jaguar. So this is actually, both these revealed yesterday, but Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce are both out for the Colts, which leaves Paris Campbell as the team's #1 wide receiver. But more than receiver, where I want to go is with the tight ends, and specifically Kylan Granson. Just like Ty Conklin last week, he got 7 targets, and he didn't get the touchdown, he didn't get the big yardage, so he's probably not being talked about like Conklin is. But I've got them back-to-back in my rankings, and so I've got Kylan Granson going in a league as a flex player that's not tight end premium because I played Trey McKitty. That was the mistake. I shouldn't have played McKitty. Would have been able to play Granson in the tight end spot, but I just think I want to get him in the lineup. I picked him up kind of preemptively thinking I'm going to just cut McKitty and going to see if I can ride Granson week to week if he's getting targets from Matt Ryan. So Paris Campbell should be a good play, but I'm really excited to play Kylan Granson this week.
Cool. Very good. I'll keep an eye on that. I don't really have any shares in Colts tight ends or anything like that, so I want to keep an eye on that. So it's good to know.
Oh, Dynasty, Mo Alley Cox is my most rostered player overall in Dynasty. So that was not a good victory. I might even see if I can start him somewhere just because he might have a good week with everyone out as well. So
yeah,
I think, well, moving on to the next game, the Bucs Saints game, right? This is the big one that everyone was waiting for. So we should get to it. Julio Jones and Alvin Kamara are both out. So Mark Ingram gets the start at running back, but to your earlier question, I kind of just like this for the Saints to just pass more. So big win for Michael Thomas, big win, I think, for Jarvis Landry. I've got him in a couple spots. I'm playing him everywhere. I do have Landry specifically. I think he'll have a really good game because he could almost double as that slot receiver underneath guy. I
agree.
Like Kamara. I mean, Thomas can do that too. So I think, again, your league was the non PPR. If it was full PPR, I would say definitely play Thomas over Sutton. The no PPR at all does.
Yeah, kind of kills
probably
a little
still
bit, right?
is the play there, but that no Kamara makes that interesting.
Do I say that Chris Godwin is also out? Is that true?
Yes, Chris Godwin is out as well. Well, I
Wow. So
think
the Buccaneers, man,
they
they
had
basically have a banged up
revealed that.
offensive line. Go ahead.
Well, because I think they revealed that a week ago that it would be a few weeks. So like, I don't think he's even expected back week 3. Whereas,
Okay.
like, I think Julio, that's a true game time decision where he might be able to come back next week. But I expect Chris Godwin out for probably the most of September.
Wow. Okay.
Because it
Interesting.
was a
So,
pretty serious hamstring injury, his first game back from a serious ACL injury, right? So I think even if he's ready to go, I think the Buccaneers want to be extra cautious with him because the hamstring problems were a problem last year, early in the season before the
mhm.
ACL thing came up. So they wonder if he's already like we were better to take him really slow. So Godwin's someone where even in his first week back, I may not want to play him. Now I think I sold all my Godwin shares in Dynasty. I actually don't have any of him this year, so I'm not
I
the
thought,
person to say this.
hey, Kyle, I could be wrong. I thought he played week 1. I thought Chris
He
Godwin
did he
played.
did play week 1, but then he
Oh.
suffered the hamstring injury.
Oh, and they said he was going to be
And then
gone for
now
a
I
while.
think
After
because of that, they're saying,
okay.
"Oh man, if this is already a problem, it's going to
They're just
be
gonna
probably
put him on the
multiple
shelf for a little
weeks."
while.
They
I
didn't
got you.
put him on IR though, so I'd
Okay.
imagine he's back. Again, I'm thinking early October he's back.
Okay.
But
Okay.
even then, like at first game back, I don't think I'd be hesitant to play him. But again, I'm saying that without having him, so it's easy for me to say that. But I may not want to play him week 1. He because he was productive before he got hurt week 1, so
No, I
there'd be
agree.
temptation there.
I agree. Yeah, man, the Buccaneers, man, they got a tougher matchup now. Their offensive line's banged up. Their wide receivers are banged up. Lenny Fournette's a little bit banged up now too, and Tom Brady's going through some emotional trauma off the field. So there's a lot of stuff going on in
Yeah,
Tampa Bay right now.
yeah.
So we'll see.
Well, and specifically to Julio, because I can speak to this. I've got Julio in one league, and I was looking through who could I possibly replace him with. I guess one of those players is Mo Alley Cox, and it's a
Yeah.
tight end premium league, so it as a flex option is viable.
Okay.
Kenyon Drake as potentially the lead back for the Dolphins, or Greg Dortch, back to the guy you called out earlier with the Cardinals. So I've got a couple options there for Julio. I don't know if you have a name that stands out to you out of those 3.
Interesting. Is it a PPR league?
Yeah, so half point PPR and tight
Okay.
ends get a full point per receptions, and then it's also half
Mm.
point per first down for all players.
Oh wow, that's great. That's an awesome league. It's really interesting. How
Mhm.
did Mo Alley Cox do last week? I didn't have any stocks in him, so I'm not really
Yeah, I'll
familiar
check
with
his
it.
scoring, but awful. I think he had 2 targets. Like
Okay.
Kylan Granson was definitely the number 1 tight end on the team. And again, maybe
Gotcha.
that's based just on targets. I think route run as well. Mo Alley Cox in this league scored 5.6 points, which obviously
So
Greg Dortch did a lot better with the big yardage, 11.3. What was and Drake? What did Drake do last week? 6.10.
I was
So
gonna say that's interesting. I think Drake with Dobbins out has the safest floor, but I think Dortch would have like a better, higher upside. And it depends on what you're trying to go for, especially with I think Andy Isabella's out and Rondo Moore might even be out too. So I think, and then obviously DeAndre Hopkins is out, so it's Hollywood Brown and who else? AJ Green's there, but I don't trust him high upside, so he might be,
still
you
Ertz
might
at
have
tight
that.
end, but yeah. No,
I don't know.
you're right. I think it does come down to that. I think the one thing with the league is the half point per first down, and
That's
the
also
running
it's
backs
really
I think
interesting.
does favor them a little bit, especially since it's only half point PPR. So I
Oh, that's
think
even that's even
I would
for a rushing first down as well.
yeah, rushing and receiving.
Oh,
So
that's a great league. I love that. That's awesome. Really
yeah, so
cool.
short yardage guy, which I guess I don't know if Drake's really the short yardage guy for them, but I'll give him another shot against the Dolphins. Although I mean the Patriots, I guess Ty Montgomery did okay against as the pass catching back.
It's true.
But on the ground, Damian Harris and Stevenson didn't really have a good week.
Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, that's definitely a thinker there.
Yeah, it is.
I guess did we touch on everything we needed to? We talked about the inactives. Again, talked about like the potential questionable players on Monday night, specifically Gabe Davis, I think is the most concerning that a lot of people will have and need replacements for. So we talked about who to replace him with on the Bills, but also the fact that you have the Vikings Eagles game as well Monday night. So you can pull players from there. We talked about KJ Osborne. If you have a flex spot and you're really desperate, like throwing a running back like Boston Scott
Hmm.
might be the way to go about it as well.
Do you like Boston Scott over Kenneth Gainwell, or are you saying that Boston Scott's more likely to be available over Kenneth Gainwell? Okay,
Exactly. Yeah, I
gotcha.
think I would prefer Gainwell just because I
Okay.
think he also could catch passes, it seems like, whereas Boston Scott's very much going to be touchdown or nothing. Like he had 8 touchdowns last year on 86, 87 carries. Like it was literally all you had was touchdowns. Like he really didn't have many yards to go with them.
Okay.
Donovan Smith also out. So
That's an interesting game. It was funny. One of my I was collaborating with someone online, and they were asking me, who would you rather start? Would you rather start the Saints defense against the Bucks, or would you start the Broncos defense against Houston? And I kind of went really quickly with Broncos Houston. I felt like a better matchup, but now the Buccaneers have a lot of chips against them, so it's kind of interesting.
the one player I didn't mention, Mike Evans is active though.
Okay.
He was questionable, so I know I had to in a couple spots and Leonard Fournette's active, so I should have, I guess, both those players. Wait, I had a whole list here of players in that game. Yeah, it was those four. So Julio and Alvin Kamara are both out. Mike Evans, Leonard Fournette in.
And then to that
Yeah, I
point,
think
Kyle, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. I'll just say to that point, Mike Evans definitely I think he had a calf injury going into this game. He'll probably be covered by Marshawn Lattimore throughout the game too. So even though he has that high upside, or he has that name recognition, but we'll see if Marshawn. I mean, he's one of the better cornerbacks in the league, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah,
Might be a Fournette game.
Well, I think Fournette's definitely a must play. I could consider benching Evans, even though he's going to be like one of the main only targets there. I suppose as a tight end deep, if you're really desperate, Cameron Brate, you could probably do worse. I think the Saints tend to do well against tight ends though too, defense wise. So I'd probably still look elsewhere. Like I'd probably look on the other side of the matchup at Taysom Hill.
So it's fun. That's Jason. So I have Mike Evans in one league. Would you bench him for Devonte Smith, Tyler Boyd, or Robbie Anderson? I don't know if I'll do that.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think that would be. I've got Evans in a league as well. I'm looking up to see who I have to bench. I think Devonte Smith's one of those players. No,
I don't trust that guy yet. Nope.
I think maybe I would downgrade him slightly, but yeah, I think he'll get the volume, but it's tough to envision the upside. In that same league, though, as a result, though, of all this, I'm benching Tom Brady. I usually go with that Brady-Evans stack, and I don't think it's going to work this week. So I
agree.
Picked up Daniel Jones and started Daniel Jones over Tom Brady this week. So we'll see how that goes.
I love it. We'll see how that goes. That's a ballsy play, Kyle. I'll see how that goes. I'll be very proud if that hits. Tip the cap team, man. It's impressive. I like that.
Actually, I guess there was one more start-sit question that I asked even last week. This is one. It's like that quarterback decision in the one league, the Fields, Tannehill, Ryan. It's probably going to be every week. I've got so much Tyler Boyd and so much Chase Claypool, but I think there's only one league where I have both, and that is a really tough decision to make every week, deciding between those two.
That is hard.
But all to say that league where I have Mike Evans and Brady, the other options to play for Mike Evans are Chase Claypool and Elijah Moore. So it's if you've got good options like. I've got DJ Chark, Marquise Brown, and I would play Evans as my third wide receiver. If I only played two receivers, then I might be willing to bench Evans. But I wouldn't bench him for guys like Claypool and Elijah Moore. I think tough defenses they're going against. So in players in good matchups, I'd be willing to bench for Evans, but it has to be a really high threshold of players. So all the players we mentioned as options, I think you and I are both going to start Evans because
I will. Yeah, I agree.
We don't have enough good players to be able to bench him.
I love that. Thank you for breaking that down. It makes a lot of sense. Like you can definitely stray away from Mike Evans if you have a high upside, if you have a Cortland Sutton or someone like that to replace him with. But if you don't have anyone of that caliber, then you definitely got to roll the dice and go with him. I agree with that.
Yeah. So, So I guess, I guess we'll leave with this one. What's your thoughts on Chase Claypool versus Tyler Boyd?
That's going to be interesting. So Chase Claypool, I was looking at his stats. It was funny. Before this morning, getting ready for this podcast, I listened to the Fantasy Pros podcast. They were talking about Chase Claypool and how the Steelers are kind of force feeding him. He actually had 6 rushing attempts last week, 6 targets last week, but he still doesn't produce. He had 18 yards receiving. Claypool has been, I had him last year. I had some shares with him last year. He was largely a disappointment for me. I wasn't really too keen on him. And Tyler Boyd, he produces, he has a higher floor in my opinion than Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool has a higher upside, but at the same time, he's playing the Patriots. I don't know if I like that matchup because the Patriots defense is typically pretty solid year in, year out. I would roll the dice with Tyler Boyd. I know it's kind of more shaky considering the fact that's a later game. I don't know. I like Tyler Boyd. I think he has the potential to do that.
And helping, I do have a couple of Monday players in this game. So the idea of it being later and it may be less shaky for me because I've got Adam Thielen. So if something goes wrong and I don't play Claypool and I can't play Boyd for whatever reason, I can throw Adam Thielen in at wide receiver.
There you go. Yeah, Thielen's pretty solid. I mean, he's his volume is going down with Justin Jefferson being that wide receiver 1, but his touchdown rate is still pretty damn high. So he's definitely a high upside guy too.
I think the Packers secondary is actually pretty good. As much as not against Jefferson, but because I think he's better than all the corners they have. But I don't think Thielen is. So I think Thielen is someone that like the Packers were able to, because the Packers shut down everyone else except Jefferson. It's just he's so much more talented than anyone they have. Even Jair Alexander is, although one-on-one tight coverage, Alexander did well against him. But the off zone, Jefferson just knew how to get away from Alexander if he was ever on him in that sense versus the zone. But I don't know if the Eagles could shut down Thielen as well, is all I'm saying. You saw like DJ Chark came back and had a big long touchdown, and it wasn't just Amon-Ra. So I guess, yeah. So I think actually now is the question Thielen versus Boyd suddenly.
That's actually pretty interesting. When the Eagles, yeah, it's gonna be interesting. So Thielen versus Boyd, that is interesting. So what I'd assume with that matchup, the Eagles would probably put Darius Slay on Justin Jefferson, maybe shade him throughout the game. So it'd be James Bradbury versus Thielen, and James Bradbury is kind of a smaller cornerback, so Thielen might be able to get those jump balls, and maybe Kirk Cousins has the he kind of errs on the side of caution, so he might not press Darius Slay too much. He might force feed Thielen, but of the two, I kind of like Tyler Boyd's upside more. I think Burrow had a bad week 1. He had a couple interceptions. He looked kind of like flustered for most of the game, and I believe in Joe Burrow. And I think he'll come back angry moving forward in this week. So he's gonna throw the ball around. So I'd roll with Tyler Boyd.
I guess the tiebreakers. I also have Joe Burrow in this league.
There you go.
So having that stack, I think I'll stick with Boyd, but. I think I like Thielen over Claypole, and that I'll be at least
I agree with that.
Know if Higgins is active or inactive when I have to make that decision.
True that.
Anyway, yeah. So we are now we're past our quota. It's 12:30 here, so appreciate this. I thought it was a really good conversation. Yeah, we talked a lot about our leagues, but also again, not just the decisions we're making, but why we're making them, and hopefully someone can listen and take away from that in terms of just the process of how we go about making start-sit decisions. And I know as the league year goes on, I'm gonna have a more regimented process. I'll say every year I make a spreadsheet for my lineup decisions, and I've got a bunch of different factors I look into. But one of the things I like is also having enough data of NFL games played. So I found it was the further along in the season I went, the more effective it became. So I think one of the things I'm doing, and same thing with my goal line grades, I'll also start publishing them after week 4.
Love that.
4 weeks, give a full month of info, and the bye weeks hit then. So I think that's when I'll start on the Sunday morning doing that and showing what does my spreadsheet look like? How am I actually making these decisions more mathematically? As opposed to right now, we're kind of going more on field narrative. The data we have from week 1 and our preconceived, or not notions, but our data, anything we were kind of projecting before the season. But I think once we get to after week 4, we've had 4 weeks of NFL data game played. I think that's when I can really implement my full season long process to there. So I'll start showing that, I suppose, week 5 of this series. But thanks for joining here, George, on week 2.
Of course, man. Kyle, it's a great conversation. I love your vision on the show. I think it definitely follow the data. I also like the thought process, thinking the why behind our decisions, and that's definitely helps everybody out. So thank you for everything, Kyle. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Braden seemed to enjoy it, and I appreciate Braden for coming on, throwing the comments, giving us questions to answer, as well as information. I guess I only mentioned one offensive lineman out, but there are a couple today. So, but yeah, appreciate everyone for listening and watching. George, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Enjoy the weekend, guys. Have a good time watching these games. It'll be a lot of fun. Really good.
Yeah, got a half hour before those lineups lock, and I think I got to go pull Julio Jones from a lineup. So let's go do that now.
Exactly right. Go on, guys. Take care.
Take care, everyone, and we'll see you all next week.